previewing a matchup with the Raptors and making sense of the increasing trade chatter. We get into the latest coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis, and joined once again today by Frank Madden. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And thanks to everyone as well who's helped make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the industry. Camille and I have talked quite a bit about trades the past couple of days, Frank, and some other numbers that have stood out about this team. But let's get your thoughts on the reports, quote unquote, from earlier in the week that the Bucks are going big game hunting, and then that's immediately followed up with names like Marcus Smart and Zach LaVine and everyone.
DeJounte Murray, not the guy from the Pelicans that we really want.
Everyone that we would associate. The only one that was missing was like Bucks are going big game hunting. They've got their eyes on Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, Kuminga may be better than like when you kind of dig into the reality of some of those guys that like supposedly. I will say this. I think a lot of those names were coming from the Jake Fisher report.
Yes.
Which, as far as I could tell, like the references to Marcus Smart. Yeah, the Marcus Smart and DeJounte Murray. I'm trying to remember who else. A couple of names were basically like, oh, well, in the past, and Wiggins, right? It was like, well, in the past they've been interested in these guys. It seemed like Zach LaVine's been like, it sounds like there have been a couple people who have referenced Zach LaVine as someone the Bucks have like been maybe more freshly interested in. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of like, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around like, a trade that sort of saves the current like iteration of this team with this coaching staff. It's just, and part of me, like, I mean, to be fair, right, what would this team look like if Giannis had played in, all but 3 or 4 games rather than having missed many more games than that? Well, I'm sure they would look much more respectable, and their record would be 13, better.
13-14 or 14-13.
Well, I mean, again,
yeah,
I'm not. I don't want. I mean, I'm. There's a lipstick on a pig sort of part of this, but I don't think Giannis playing like means that suddenly like they would be in the top 4 and like looking great, because we've seen issues and like the Wizards loss and there were very clear flaws even when Giannis has been healthy. But yeah, I mean, it's notable that, basically the front office and ownership, they don't seem to be, they seems like, at least for now, they are kind of keeping a stiff upper lip. And until Giannis really forces their hand, at least for now, they are continuing to play the like, all right, our superstar, best player in franchise history hasn't asked out, so we're going to continue to try to win with him. And honestly, like, if I'm going to be consistent, I guess I'm okay with that. Like I'm being moved towards greater and greater indifference on that front, because where is this headed? Regardless, I certainly don't think with the current coaching staff that like you're going to be able to maximize a version of this team with Giannis and the bones of what they currently have. And I think the names that have been thrown around, I don't think any of those guys are transformative, in a way that you would ideally want. And the hard part is I don't know that, honestly, even if they went quote unquote big game hunting and found some bargain deal, right? I don't know who that is, right? You know, because it's like you look at the likes of LaVine and Jeremy Grant, and it's like, oh, you know, you can paint a picture to yourself of like, well, these guys, these are really good players. You know, Jeremy Grant's had a turnaround season. Zach LaVine is one of the best shooters in the league, even though people don't think of him that way. But it's like, are they fundamentally, you know, solving what kind of ails the Bucks, and what do you have to give up in that scenario, right? And are you giving up, you know, any of the either the 2031 first, got to give up something, 2131 first, or, you know, Orion Rollins, which, you know, who has been kind of found money here over the past year.
Yeah.
It again, like it's just, there's no easy way out of this. And so I certainly understand why a lot of fans at this point are kind of just like, just, you know, put us out of our misery, Giannis, like just ask for the trade and we run the auction and see what, you know, we can get. And we just try to, you know, reset this whole thing. But yeah, I mean, there's just no, but again, like, okay, if you do that, then what, right? Like, well, you're not going anywhere for probably years anyway. So yeah, so it's just in, you know, you're kind of rock versus hard place, and kind of, you know, perhaps you're more likely at this point, based on some of the reporting, maybe you are more likely to end up just trying to make a go of it this year. If Giannis is indeed unwilling to put his foot down and actually, you know, ask for a trade in season. And then, you know, as we've all been sort of expecting, well, then next summer that extension becomes sort of the forcing mechanism for all this. Because if he says he's not willing to extend, then it's like, okay, what are we doing here, right? Like you're in the loveless marriage at that point, and how much are you really willing to, you know, go to a walk year with him, given you're not going to be competing for a championship? You know, like, how are you going to win him over in the 26-27 season, right? So it's it's rock meets hard place, basically.
Camille,
so how are we feeling other than that?
Anything to lift the mood?
You know, on Technical File this week, my co-host Eric said that it could be a situation where it's like a bad relationship and you have a baby instead of just breaking up because you're trying to save your relationship. And it's like, I don't want the Bucks and Giannis to get to that point where it feels like,
you could argue they already adopted a kid with the Damian Lillard stretch. So.
You could, but that's the thing. Like, I don't mind if the Bucks want to try to make some moves this season to try to shore up and try to do something. But I don't want that move to come at the cost that is too steep and it takes on a player that doesn't fit. And then ultimately you get the same result, which is come this summer, you know, Giannis is like, this isn't really what I want. And now you've thrown away a future asset that you're really going to need as you continue to try the rebuild around him. So for me, I still am in the camp of, as long as Giannis wants to be in Milwaukee, you continue to build around Giannis. I think that this team, if healthy, is better than its current record. Now, the ceiling might not be as high as I initially thought in the offseason, but I do think they're better than what we have seen so far. And I'm just at a place now where it's like, I don't want a desperation move. I don't want a panic move to be made. If we don't have a solidified answer of what the future is going to be with Giannis, play it cool. Just play it cool.
Yeah, and that's what makes this kind of, I guess, a double-edged sword where there's an interesting path of like, well, could you potentially, your selling point and what you convince him on is some stuff that you would be able to do in the offseason. But part of that as well is like, look, we are going to be extra cautious with you and not like shut you down per se, but it's our preference you don't play a lot of these games and just take more time to rehab, because at this point we could get a pick that's inside the top 10 in this draft that's supposed to be pretty loaded, and that could be one of the pieces there that helps us, and then some other things that we can open up via some trades down the road, and on draft night 3 first-round picks that are available. But again, that's really tough and a tough proposition to say, okay, we're going to trade 3 picks in the first round down the road and, you know, an expiring contract and something else to bring in this piece. because Giannis can't sign an extension until October 1st. And even if he tells you, like, yeah, okay, fine, let's see how this works, you're in that dangerous spot then of like, I hope this is going to pan out here, because otherwise we're 2 weeks into the season and same type of thing, that this team has some growing pains or this team is underperforming, and then it does very much feel like the writing is on the wall. So it's a tricky spot for them to be in, no doubt. We've mentioned some of the names that have been mentioned most frequently. There's a couple others that we left out, including one that you can't see, but we named our recording studio around. We'll get into that coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. Well, the World Cup returns to North America for the first time since 1994. 48 teams here for the first time ever. It's going to be massive, but getting tickets, that's usually the hardest part. That's why Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You just pull up the app, and the layout makes it simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. You pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for the fine print, and you get a seat view within the app. You can literally see what the pitch looks like from your seat before you buy. Plus, alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing the action. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and get $20 off your first purchase when using Game Time. New year, new systems, and this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of running a business and just think there has to be a better way. Well, there is. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. If you're ready to make your workday smoother and keep customers connected without the headaches, Quo makes upgrading your setup easier than ever. You have calls, texts, and voicemails in one clean view, keeping everything organized and helping you stay responsive, and even get AI summaries and call logging. It feels like you have an assistant keeping track of every detail. So make this the year with no opportunity and no customer slipping away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That is QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. So there's other names that seem rather obvious when we talk about big game hunting, and the Bucks are going to do something to try and convince Giannis to stay. There's one name that keeps coming up the most, and that is Anthony Davis of the Dallas Mavericks, which is complicated on a number of fronts. I mean, number one, we've seen now a couple of years where Giannis has dealt with some injuries. Injuries is a word that I would keep pretty closely tied to Anthony Davis throughout his career. But then, oh, by the way, you signed a center in the offseason that you're paying $20+ million to. So I would assume any deal would include him, and a recognition of this didn't work, and actually Anthony Davis is going to be better for us than Giannis. But it also creates one other massive problem in that it would give you a front court, theoretically, when healthy. Yeah, you got a lot of defensive prowess. Camille, you've talked about maybe AD being a fake good shooter before in the past, but also two guys that don't want to play the five. So Are we looking at a front court then of AD, Giannis, and Jericho Sims as your starting bigs? But that's the name. That's the name that I just feel like, oh man, I don't know if we can dismiss this, because this one seems to check all the boxes of a desperation move, big enough name, something you would take to a star player and say, what about this? Gonna be available from the team that he currently plays for. Like, This is starting to check off all of those that I just feel like we can't immediately dismiss this.
I'm going to be quick, Frank, before I give you the floor here. And I just want to say, see, my voice is already leaving because even my body knows I don't
It's the
want
disgust in your voice.
when AD was first being traded, when he ended up with the Lakers, I was very excited about the idea of like, hey, maybe like in 2019, I think it was when that was going on, the initial trade rumors there of like, hey, I was into it in 2019 of like, that's a move I would make. In the year of 2025, I am not as inclined to take that risk, given the contract, given the injury history, and then given the fact that it seems as if, to your point, Justin, he doesn't like playing the five. Giannis doesn't like playing the five. Are they going to play rock, paper, scissors before every game of like who's actually the five? Like I
told you
am
what they're
not
going to do.
I am not interested in that being the big game. Like if he was healthy, then you could probably try to talk. I could probably try to talk myself into it, but the if he's healthy part is just that carries a lot of the weight.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give Anthony Davis credit. I mean, Anthony Davis, when he plays, is actually like a very, very, very good, very impactful NBA player, you know, which, I mean, the problem with the likes of a Zach LaVine or a Jeremy Grant is, do they actually impact winning when they're on the floor? Debatable, you know. You can certainly look at their raw stats in particular and say like, oh, give me these guys, you know. But the problem with AD is exactly what you're saying, right? Injuries, you know. Yeah, he just, I mean, you look at the games played over the last, you know, well, his whole career really, but especially, you know, since he landed, you know, in LA, it's like, I think he had like 2 years where he played like a normal amount of games, and he had a lot of years where he just missed a ton of time. And it's obviously been just a continuation of that, you know, since he went to Dallas. So the lack of durability, he's almost 33 years old. So he's, you know, older than Giannis by a couple of years, basically. And then,
by the way, currently battling a calf issue.
Yeah. So, you know, volume discount, I don't know, calf injury treatments, like, you can just line up next to each other and get the same treatment, you know? So yeah, it's hard. I mean, he is legitimately like a great player. I think he still can be a very impactful player. And the thing with AD is, I mean, he doesn't, you know, we've obviously heard a lot over the years about him not wanting to play center. The reality is he has played a ton of center, and it has generally worked very well. He is much more of a center than Giannis is, I think. Whereas Giannis, I think, is a guy that doesn't really want to play center, and also I don't think like actually is like at his best at center, whereas I think AD actually is at his best playing center and can defend. The AD plays like a center, right? Like he can stand in the paint and defend the rim. Giannis is not really like a stand back there and defend the rim type of guy. He's much more of that like weak side type roamer, you know, that he's obviously kind of been his entire career. So I think certainly defensively there, you know, yeah, I think you could make it work. And it's obviously, I think would be, you know, certainly more flexible than, you know, playing like a traditional center with Giannis. But offensively, I think it, you know, certainly leaves something to be desired. Just he's never kind of lived up to the expectations as a floor spacer. But you know, he has obviously an in-between game and a level of skill that is unique. And he's not obviously a guy that like needs to just like be like Giannis in terms of just like having the ball at the top of the key or elbow and just facilitating entire offense. I mean, he's certainly much more used to playing off ball than Giannis is. So look, I mean, I think you could make it work, but again, like to what end? And I think the other piece of it is just like, you know, you could convince me there are versions of the world where, you know, Jeremy Grant or Zach LaVine could be had for relatively little in return. But like Dallas, I don't think they're going to have to give Anthony Davis away. Right. And so like, what are you giving up? Are you having to give up, you know, Miles Turner and salary and Ryan Hollins and a future first round pick or something like that? You know, that's a lot. You know, that's a whole lot. And so, you know, I just think it's just, you know, again, like I mean, our friend Eric Name pointed out, like, coming into the season, right? Like a lot of people thought like, oh, wow, their Bucks have played their last card. They've mortgaged their last cent in this Miles Turner move in the Damian Lillard stretch. And, Eric correctly pointed out, like, nope, they can do more. Yeah. And, obviously over time, especially as you guys mentioned, as you get to draft night next year, or we're still in 2025 technically. So once you get to June, you have even more flexibility in terms of what you can trade. But, I think it's notable that the Bucks we really did not hear a discussion of the Bucks putting that 2031 pick into trades or them pursuing guys that might have required that over the summer, which to me was always sort of, if I'm Giannis, that would have been my big question. It's like, well, what are you going to do to make us better? Go cash that piece in and get us some more help. And they didn't do that. And again, maybe they were being prudent. Maybe they had the intention of, keeping that for the long term, or maybe they just, it's John Horst just being kind of trying to keep that in his back pocket to strike when the opportunity's right.
We did enough over the summer. I know he said we did everything humanly possible to make it, and implied there was other things that they were working on that they just couldn't do. But maybe it was also we added Miles Turner. We kept these other guys that played really well for us. We feel like we did enough, and we have this down the road if we need to use it, but it's also our own insurance in case this thing blows up drastically here. So, I mean, and for Anthony Davis, the games played, I think it's just 2 of the last 7 seasons he's played in 60 or more games. Now, I haven't done the math here, but just the eye test and looking at it, I would imagine in the last 5 years, when you look at their games played, he's not actually that far off from Giannis's games played over that same time period. So I understand it goes back further than that for AD with some of the injury concerns, but that's the other thing that's kind of starting to build here with Giannis, and especially with this one, with a calf injury that has popped up a couple of times now. You can see how it would make the Bucks even more squeamish to say, we know we're in a tough spot given how poorly we have played with you off the floor. But we just saw a guy deal with something like this that was later termed to be a blood clot and then eventually ruptured his Achilles. But we can't go through that again if we're this team. So we're going to be extra cautious with you. And if that means that, I don't know if the Bulls played tonight and lost or not, but the Bucks and Bulls are jockeying for the 10th spot in the East. And if that means we fall out of that, it's certainly not ideal when you've got to sell Giannis on the future of this team, but it may also be one of the more beneficial things for this team to just say, we are going to be bad this year, because if there's a year where we can do it, this is the only year in the short term that we can because of the draft assets. We know we're going to have a pick because of how bad the Pelicans are, and that thing, depending on how it goes, could be as high as like 5 if we really start to plummet and do well in the lottery here. So we are going to take our time with you. We are going to get a good player this summer, or not even that. If that's the other thing. If you know where you're drafting too, and there's somebody that has their eye on someone, it could be a part of that too, of, all right, give us this guy that's proven to pair with Giannis, and we'll give you this pick and something else that's filler. But we're still about a month away from really having to decide, yep, now it's time to that's the route that we have to take. But where they currently are and how they're trending, it feels like it's starting to push you to the edge of the cliff there. For some numbers that Camille and I talked about on yesterday's show, Frank, I know you've talked about this. We talked about one of them on a recent post-game show. We'll get your thoughts on that. And what made its way through social media earlier in the day, and the Bucks media availability after their practice on Wednesday. Some of the things we heard from head coach Doc Rivers. We will get into those conversations coming up next on Locked On Bucks. It's 2025, almost 2026, and those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you see the doctor, well, they need to be over. No more walking it off for 6 months. No more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just from sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously and ZocDoc makes that easier than ever. Because staying healthy is more than hitting the gym or eating right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. Using ZocDoc makes scheduling easier. You search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. Real appointment times are listed, including same-day visits. No more back-and-forth phone calls or waiting weeks to be seen. Super helpful for routine checkups and those little issues you've been meaning to get checked out. The app is quick, clean, and it removes all the stress of finding the right doctor. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That is ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. So after their practice, the Bucks practice on Wednesday, we heard from Doc Rivers, and I received some messages from one of our friends about the back and forth that he had with another reporter, and that, hey, it wasn't my turn today. Somebody else got to feel it. The quote that made its rounds was Jim Owczarski asking Doc about, I don't even remember what the setup was, but basically like just effort and like go out there and play hard. Like, is that one of the things you're pushing? And the message was apparently, well, that's not a controllable. Because the framing was like control the controllables, and apparently that's not a controllable. So that was one of the things that was pushed back against on a previous media appearance post-practice. Doc had kind of hinted at breaking up Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. And seemed to indicate, I was talking with Eric and said he was asked again about rebounding and quickly dismissed that. And what he pointed to was, well, the big focuses that we have that are going to make us better are protecting the ball and just not fouling. So that's the immediate fix for this team is let's not foul and let's not turn the ball over, and that'll change things for us. It will certainly help, but Camille, as we talked about on yesterday's show, I think we're past the point of the, some teams can and some teams can. It depends on the personnel that you have. Like, at some point, you just have to say, you know what, screw it. We're going to try because our defense is what it is. It is nowhere near good enough. So if the concern is, well, if we go after offensive rebounds, we don't have guys that can do it and we're not going to get back in transition. Buddy, you're not getting back in transition anyway, and you might as well see if these guys actually can pull in the offensive rebounds.
The funny thing is, towards the end, when he was talking about how the Bucks need to win a little bit more on the margins, and he was like, if we can get like one more turnover and even just one more offensive rebound, like that helps flip the margins for us. In addition to the things you mentioned, Justin, saying that the team should foul less, turn the ball over less. And he pointed out like, hey, the turnovers have become a bigger problem now that Giannis has not been in the lineup. It's harder to play 48 minutes of basketball with no Giannis at all. And you're trying to scrape the things together with Scoot and Rollins being really your two primary ball handlers. So like, again, I get it. But I still don't quite understand how effort is something that's not a controllable when everyone can control their own individual effort. We've heard the players themselves talk about the effort levels, or even just the preparation mentally of not sleepwalking through games, understanding that, hey, every game we come out here, we have to play at a certain level. That's controllable in my book. It might not be controllable by the coaching staff directly, but that is something that everybody who steps on the court can control. Like, that was something I was kind of like, that doesn't make too much sense for me. But hearing him say, like, if we can just kind of flip the margins a little bit more, we'll be in better shape. I agree with that. But the how we're going to flip those margins is still something I have a couple of questions about. I'll say it like that.
Guys, I'm tired. I don't know if my effort is where it needs to be. I don't know if I'm controlling it.
Can you control it though?
Yeah. The Bucks have ground me down. I can no longer control my effort to give the effort I need to on this podcast. I don't know. It's a little hard to watch. I mean, like when watching the Bucks, it's like a little bit hard for me to look at it and say, well, the problem, because I did watch I watched that game on Sunday. I watched the whole thing. I watched it live. I had it on while the Packers game was on my phone. And I don't know that it was like an effort thing per se. I think it all just sort of, to me, starts with the fact that, like, I don't know what the thesis of this team is.
Yeah, you're fighting an uphill battle right after.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's the fundamental problem is, especially without Giannis, there is no thesis of like how this team like
There's no identity.
reliably wins, right? The identity is not there. And you know, like when your offense is, you know, KPJ and Kuz Jazz Odyssey, you know, like it's like you're gonna have turnovers, you're gonna have like inconsistent decision making, you know. So I would just say, like, if you're gonna principle your offense on ball control, then like when you know your top two usage guys at this point might be, you know, KPJ and Kuz, like good luck, but I would not pin your hopes on ball control and, you know, sort of like structured offense, because that's just not how those guys like are at their best. So so yeah, I mean, it's just like how you win. Honestly, like we haven't seen like proof of concept of like anything other than just sort of Giannis brilliance and guys being able to take advantage off that. And I think, you know, I am not going to be baited into the trap of saying like, wow, you know, like they really miss AJ Green, and, you know, how can we possibly not lose by 45 points against the Nets when you're missing AJ Green? I love AJ Green. The numbers speak for itself. He's been a plus minus monster, you know, the last couple of years. So I think he reliably makes your team better. I think he's one of the few guys who like actually can give you something of an identity, because he is such a floor stretcher and guy that, you know, you can actually be like, all right, okay, we need to push the ball early, try to find him, you know, before the defense gets set. We need to run him off screens to get him, you know, the ball in actions where the defense, you know, really has to react to him. So I think he's one of the few guys that like maybe you can make that case for. But yeah, I mean, I think the identity, if we want to talk about offense, I think the guys that I look at, you know, that I think you need to be able to weaponize more effectively, I think certainly AJ, and I don't know that like they've done like a bad job. I don't know, because again, I don't think like you just push a button and get AJ 10 threes a game or something like that. It is a bit of a challenge because he's not a pure shot creator. So you need to really scheme to get him looks, which is difficult, especially without Giannis. But AJ is a guy I would definitely say, like, if he's healthy, I think you have to really figure out like how you structure the offense in a way that you're getting him looks and you're kind of building that 3-point heavy offense that was talked about preseason, but then just hasn't materialized. And the other guy is Miles Turner. And to me, I think like Turner is probably the most emblematic of the coaching staff's failure really on both ends. Because I think offensively, you know, like the thing that, and I can't remember, Camille, if we or Justin, if either of us talked about it, but I just come back to this quote that Doc said after, it was not the Detroit game, it was a game they lost. So I'm trying to think what it was, if it was like the Washington game or it was some game where Sims was playing in the fourth quarter.
Oh, where we needed a rim runner.
Yeah, and
a roller.
Yeah, and Miles was, you know, didn't play much in the fourth quarter or something.
Yeah, I think it was the Pistons game.
And was it the second one though? Because I don't think it. Yeah. Anyway, but the bottom line is, it was he made a comment like, "Oh, we needed Jericho's like rim rolling, right?" And to me, this is just like infuriating, because it's like Miles Turner is a better rim roller than Jericho Sims. Why? Because Miles Turner, though not the athlete that Jericho Sims is, can actually catch a basketball, you know, like,
well, and can do something with it after he catches it,
and can actually do something with it. And so I think there were some encouraging signs after Giannis first went down. I think of like the Miami game, right?
Yeah.
Where you know, Miles really kind of popped early, and they got him the ball inside and against mismatches, and they, I think, used him in a very effective way. I think that I was really hopeful that was more of a vision for how they could use him, especially when Giannis was out. We talked about early in the season when Giannis and him were like almost always on the floor together. Man, they should stagger him more. And unfortunately, like with Giannis out, like, well, he's always staggered now because Giannis is not playing at all. So I think to me, that would probably be the first thing that I'm talking about with my coaching staff is how do we get Miles more involved? Because he's not a throw him the ball on the block and have him go to work type of guy. But I think he needs to be setting screens. He needs to be the one setting screens, not Jericho Sims. Okay. I don't care who is guarding Jericho Sims, right? I don't care if, Justin, your grandma is guarding Jericho Sims. I don't want him in the primary ball actions, like it's just, you're playing into the fact, like bury him in the dunker spot. And if people help off him, fine. But at least then, like, that's where he can like actually do something where he's not being asked to make decisions and whatever. So I think Miles to me is like the guy that I look at is like, how do you get him more involved offensively? And then I think defensively, and we've talked a bit, like, I think they've played him too high up on the floor too often, probably play him in more drop type of scenarios. Okay. Maybe you give up technically more paint touches that way, which I know is a point of emphasis. They don't want paint touches, but look, like to me, that's more of a like point of attack problem, not a like how we're playing the screen, the screen and roll type problem.
And really quick to your point about the Miles Turner, which I'm glad that you brought up, the way that Doc talks about the bigs and his thought process behind playing them together really was interesting to me because he mentioned like, Miles is the popper. That's why we play him next to Jericho, because Jericho can roll and he can pop. And that's why we like Kuz with Bobby, because Kuz is the roller and Bobby's the popper. And he keeps talking about them kind of singular in that way. And I think it does do Miles Turner a disservice by putting him solely in a popping box. Although he admitted we have been using him as a roller more often, like not enough still. Like he can be lethal. He can be better if you let him also roll to the basket a little bit more often and not view him purely as a popper.
Well, I think it was Doc early in the season, though, that had said, because I remember the line about Miles and trying to kind of get him acclimated in that. I want to say it was Doc that said it. That was like, yeah, he'll pop. And we've tried to tell him like, oh, no, you don't have to replace Brooke. Like, you don't have to only pop. You can roll to the rim in this offense, too. Like, we want you to do that. And yet 4 weeks later, here we are where that's not the case. And I think that's the other frustrating part of all of it too. Obviously, you guys are very free to be as open as you want about coaching criticisms. It's a little touchy for me, but for how much we've heard about paint touches being the important part of let's limit that on defense. I mean, if that's so important, I would expect to see that an emphasis of your offense to try to get paint touches. And we haven't from this group so far. So yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of things as Camille and I and Frank, you and I talked about this. Everybody is aware of it. We've documented the true shooting attempts and where it's at for the Bucks, that they're taking the second fewest on average per game. And they're getting beat in that category, the second most in the league. It's not just one thing. It's not just rebounding. It's rebounding on both ends, offensive and defensive. It's the fouls. It's not getting fouls. It's the turnovers and not getting turnovers. So that's why it's not like one thing of like, oh, just start doing this. And it's not just one trade to fix this either, which I guess puts you in the weird spot of like, well, I don't know which way this is going to go. I don't know if Giannis is all of a sudden going to come back and all right, they've at least asserted themselves as when they have Giannis, they're not the 10th team in the East. They're certainly not the third and where our hopes were, but they're not 10th. I don't know if it's just going to be too late. And again, going back to a day or so ago when Doc talked after practice, he said early in the exit that he would guess it would be closer to 4 weeks. And I don't remember what his exact quote was in yesterday or 2 days ago's media availability, but it was basically read between the lines. Yeah, he's not close. It's still at least 2 weeks and maybe even more before he returns. So you can't just be waiting on Superman to come and save you.
No, you can't be doing that at all. And I think to your point about how time is ticking, the Bulls did beat the Cavaliers tonight. I'm not exactly sure still what's going on in Cleveland, but if the East continues being this mismatch of just kind of the back and forth, like the Bucks
Not
are
only
going.
beats Camille,
Hey,
handedly
listen,
beats.
the Bucks are going to continue to have a puncher's chance, even with the record being what it is, to move into the top 6, I think, in the conference. But they're going to have to eventually, at some point, stop the skid that they're on and win 2 plus 2, at least 2 games. Let's start with 2 games in a row. Win 2 games in a row, since we haven't done that since October 30th. Like, they just got to start stacking.
Well, I mean, and like that's honestly the biggest thing is like it is approaching 2 months since you last won consecutive games. I would assume if we go back in recent years and you say teams that won a playoff series, you're not going to find one that went 6 weeks without winning back-to-back games.
Be tough, I would assume.
The Bulls have leapfrogged them, so they're 11-15, and again, you're 11-16, so you're 4 losses in front of the Wizards, who are last, but you're 4 losses behind the Hawks, who are 7th. So you're just as close to the worst record in the league, in the conference, than you are to still being at the top of the play-in tournament.
I honestly like Justin and what you were kind of alluding to earlier about, like, I mean, this is obviously a unique opportunity for them to bottom out in a way that and actually retain a high pick in a way that we didn't think they really could because of the lack of control over picks. That said, I have a hard time seeing a world where like Giannis is part of that, If Giannis says like, okay, I think I want to move on, then I think obviously it's a 2-step sort of remainder of the season, right? You trade him for a bunch of stuff, and presumably you don't get like somebody that's gonna not gonna make you better, right? Like you're not gonna have a hard time like floundering if you move Giannis. Like that's obviously apparent, right? From what we've seen from them so far. And then I think like you say, like, okay, well then like we'll happily let the wheels come off here and hope that both us and the Pelicans get really high picks, and we keep whatever. So I've sort of
the ultimate irony being like you end up moving past the Pelicans in the lottery, where you still get a good pick, but they're taking, or the Hawks are taking your pick, and you're getting New Orleans.
Yeah. So I will say I'm not quite there yet, and sort of I don't foresee a scenario where Giannis is like, oh yeah, like I'll sit out a bunch of games and whatever. Like it's interesting, right? I mean, Giannis it's probably going to be hard for him to play enough games to qualify for awards.
I think it's out.
I think he's like at 10 games now, and 17 is where you basically drop out. And even some of the games he's played, he hasn't played more than 15 minutes, which I mean, I don't think those even count. So like, which sucks because as a Giannis,
best case scenario is when he does come back, if it's the timeline that we envision, he would basically have like 1 game to miss for the rest of the year.
Need to play out pretty much.
Yeah. And as someone who like loves Giannis stats and records and all that, like it sucks because like it's an incredible streak that he's put together in terms of the consecutive all NBA seasons, consecutive NBA All-Star starter,
top 4 in MVP.
Yeah, and like obviously like we're on pace for all that just getting chucked out the window. And I do think that matters to Giannis, right? Sometimes people act like Giannis doesn't care about stats and awards and things like that, but like he cares about his legacy, and that stuff is very much part of the legacy
one other
of what he's
thing.
doing.
I mean, I was talking about this with Eric too, in that the other part that makes that a difficult sell is not just the Giannis is a competitor, and you're not going to get him to like, hey, just sit out most of this season and we're going to tank for a draft pick. But also you go back to when he was talking with Eric after that game a couple of a week or so, 2 weeks ago, and mentioning where he wanted to finish in career all-time points scored. you got a lot of work to do to get there, and basically punting on a year is not going to help that cause. So like that's another reason why he's not going to just be like, all right, if this is what we're doing, even if it's not shutting me down, but I'm only going to play in like 40 games and take a week off here. Like I don't see him signing off on that.
No, me either. Me either. He's too competitive for that. And to your point that you both have made, the legacy matters too much. Like the streak has been just beautiful, especially given how the first 2 seasons of his career went, where he wasn't like that star player that's scoring 20 points a game or anything like that. Like it's been a grind for him to do so. And it doesn't seem like it's in his DNA to just be like, I'm cool with not quitting, but like I'm cool with giving this up for now. It doesn't seem like a Giannis thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to like handicap kind of how this plays out, I think we talked about this last time I was on the pod, right? But there's not going to be a trade or movement while he's hurt, especially with everybody deathly afraid of calf injuries these days. So pretty much the only thing for him now is to get healthy and start playing with this team. The team has to try to figure out like how do they resuscitate some version of themselves that can be competitive and not I mean, like the joke early in the season was the Giannis whole like, oh, good teams don't lose 2 games in a row. It's like, well, bad teams don't win 2 games in a row, and right now you're have basically been a bad team since the first 2 weeks of the season basically. So so they have to figure out how do they get out of being that bad team, right, and actually like being a team that maybe not goes
mediocre.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, mediocre, is probably okay in terms of like for the non-Giannis period. And I think
mediocre gets you to the 6th seed in the East right now.
Yeah. So I think to me, like the goal for, let's say it's, 2 weeks or something like that you need to kind of patch over until maybe you get Giannis back. I mean, to me, the goal for those 2 weeks should be you figure out how to better weaponize Miles Turner consistently. Jericho Sims has played 30 minutes or more, I think, in like 4 of the last 5 games. It's freaking absurd. The only game of that they won, he played.
In fairness, one of them was a 45-point loss where you just emptied the bench.
Yeah.
But
watching him and Ajax play together and like literally, what did they go? Did they go scoreless for the last like 6 minutes of the game or something like that? I mean, that was like performance art. Like I was like, is Doc got something on the under in this game? Is that why he's playing these dudes together? And they threw like a couple lobs to each other, and I was like, oh, that's cute, I mean, they're easy guys to root for, but it's just like, good Lord, like it's hard making one of these guys like work on offense, and now you put them together, like, oh. But so I think like to me the goal right now is like, how do you get Miles Turner the ball in different ways? Again, he's not going to just be able to get going shooting pick and pop threes exclusively. So how do you get him freed up around the basket, get him some mismatch post touches? I think like even in that Brooklyn game, like there were times where he was like flashing to the middle of the lane and they were having a hard time getting him the ball, deep catches. I think they should try to do that. And use him as a roller, like try to figure out with Rollins and KPJ, can you begin to build some sort of consistency there? And I don't know, maybe that means you have to try to play him with Bobby more. I don't know. Like there's not like any great options here. Probably Kuz, is obviously your kind of other, like probably your best complement. But, obviously he brings some of the spacing issues that we've talked about in the context of Giannis too. So I think unlocking thing. And then I think it's just a question with like Rollins and KPJ, I mean, it's been disappointing. Like the fact that, I mean, last game was disappointing for both guys. Like did KPJ hit a shot outside of like breakaways? I think he might've been like 0 for 11 or something. Yeah. He was I think he had like 2 like pick sixes or something. And I was just like, did he not make a single shot in half court? I don't think that's typical, but he was due for a mean regression game. I mean, you look at what his stats were. It was like, okay, he's got to miss a shot.
Shooting, and
he's going to miss some shots at some point. So I mean, that's not typical, but I mean, they have to figure out like how do they sort through the Rollins versus KPJ touches, that is actually a good problem to have, which the Bucks don't have many good problems at this point. But if it requires breaking them up, my assumption is that KPJ would stay the starter and Rollins would come off the bench.
Yeah.
It's unfair given Rollins has been their second best player, in the aggregate this year. But it's not like Rollins isn't going to play 30. I mean, Rollins should still play 30 minutes, even if he comes off the bench. He's going to have to play with KPJ at various points. But I understand it's probably hard for him because, it's been extremes, right? Like he had to be like the guy who was always on the ball and was playing all these tough defenders when Giannis first got injured and KPJ was out. Then now he's like probably feeling like he's not getting enough touches to really have much of a rhythm. So they need to find what that happy medium is. Again, I think you can do that by starting them both and just staggering them quickly, having one go to the bench early, which is typically what they've done. But I also think it's hard to do that until AJ comes back, which is it
At the very least.
Are we probably getting AJ back next game? Maybe, hopefully. I hope
I
so.
didn't hear anything
I think they
on
really
that.
need him.
That was my assumption after the Nets game, and that he was close, and this time off would probably help that. I didn't hear if Doc gave an update. He is still listed as questionable on the injury report for tomorrow. And now you had Kyle Kuzma as questionable with an illness, and Cole Anthony questionable with a neck strain, which was the exact same ailment we saw from Taurean Prince before learning, it's actually neck surgery, and he's probably out for the season. But yeah, they desperately need AJ Green back. And I mean, we're also at the point where now when you see Kyle Kuzma in injury reports, you're like, oh man, we really need that guy too.
Yeah. Kyle Kuzma has become that guy, which unexpected to a degree, but I credit to Kyle Kuzma and the work that he put in this offseason to really playing a particular style of brand of basketball for this team.
My one wish for the rest of the year, guys, is that there's someone that maybe has a screen printing business or just does it in their free time. If you can put together a shirt, get like one of those 90s backdrops that we would all take our picture in front of, like a nice visual of space, and just get the cosmic gumbo text with KPJ and Kyle Kuzma on
there. My only other thing I would say is I would consider playing. I would look at Pete Nance over Jericho Sims at this point, because I mean, basically Sims is like an all defense sort of guy. Nance is more an all offense guy at this point. It's just really hard. I mean, we saw this last year with Ajax.
Yeah.
It's just so hard. These guys that are just like all one way players, it's just like, it just makes it really hard, especially, it's one thing if you have like Dame Lillard or somebody who's, is just like an offense unto themselves. And, like Dame with Ajax, I think we never really saw a lot of that. But I'm not that worried that like Ajax is going to screw the offense up with Dame. But like with Giannis, given the spacing stuff, it was hard. Those lineups didn't work. He was the only guy that was a negative with Giannis last year. And I think this year, like with Jericho, granted, Jericho is a big, so it's a little bit easier, because like it's a more typical role to not have an offensive style guy. But again, it's just, I think it's just really hard to kind of make it work. And again, like if Jericho Sims is playing 8 to 10 minutes, like that's totally fine, I think. But it's just like, I think it's just stretching just way beyond kind of think like what is workable. And so again, like, is his minus 26 on off rating, like, is that a true measure of how like destructive he's been to this team? No, I think there's some funhouse mirror stuff in there. I mean, he's like the worst on the team.
I was waiting to see how long you would pause there.
Yeah, he's the worst on the team in both offensive and defensive on-off rating. I don't think he is. I think he should be a net positive defensive player at least. There's no reason why. Like, I think then you start to say like, okay, like coaching staff, like how are you screwing up? Like, because Jericho Sims is like not a bad defender. Like you should be able to defend with Jericho Sims on the floor. So that's bad. But like offensively, like of course he should be a massive negative, right? Like, so I would again, like I would, I think, Amir Coffey shown us like enough to deserve like some extended run? Not really, but honestly, like at this point, Amir Coffey, come on down. Let's see what you got. Like Gary Harris doesn't do anything on offense anymore. God bless him. He tries on defense. Appreciate it. We'll always have the Boston game where he was plus 26 with 0 points in 33 minutes. The taking its place alongside the Tim. I cannot remember Tim Frazier game.
Tim Frazier
in Atlanta.
The Bonzie Colson game.
The 53-minute Atlanta game. But yeah, like at this point, I would just say, and again, I'm not expecting this, but let's see what Amir Coffey can do in his spot. Give Pete Nance.
We may see it. We may see it later on tonight if there's no Kyle Kuzma available, and if AJ is still out.
Yeah, I know Pete can operate a dribble handoff, hit an open three. Defensively, he's not great, but can occasionally block a shot. So
could you imagine if Malcolm didn't retire and the Bucks brought back Malcolm Brogdon, and you get the 2-man game of Malcolm Brogdon and Pete Nance of I don't know which one of them is going to shoot it, but whoever does, we've got 14 seconds to get out there and close out on it.
I thought you were going to say, and you bring back Malcolm Brogdon, and then you bring back Greg Monroe, and then you rekindle. I went back.
I've already seen trades out there, Frank, that are just screw it. Let's bring back the entire 20.
Bring back Brooke, bring back Drew, bring back Chris. If we're gonna go out this way, we're gonna go out with our guys.
I still regret that because they had really good chemistry. Malcolm Brogdon and Greg Monroe had great chemistry for like one and a half seasons or whatever. And we never kind of got the Brogro nickname but it was fun to say in like a Scooby-Doo kind of way. Brogro. You had to say it like Scooby-Doo. So yeah, shout out to days forgotten of Malcolm Brogdon and Greg Monroe. Let's see what Pete Nance can do. And Malcolm Brogdon, is it unretirement Malcolm Brogdon?
I mean,
if Cole Anthony is gone for some extended period, I'm assuming that doesn't happen, but
don't overthink this. Don't overthink this, Frank.
Can we get an injury exception for Taurean Prince? Bring in Malcolm Brogdon, the president, the guy we sort of loved at times.
We know the Bucks love 6'4" guards, and he would fit into that mold.
I think he's technically 6'5" though.
Yeah.
So,
and also,
he has
let's
like a 6'11"
not
wingspan. So.
Yeah, and also, given how much we've heard Doc talk about, we just have to stop turning the ball over. I mean, the answer is staring all of us in the face. It's not Malcolm Brogdon.
Don't you say Chris Paul.
It's as soon as they pull off a 2-for-1 deal and open up a roster spot, it's the point guard that finally comes here, and that's our plan to.
It's not bad. We talking about
save the season. The Raptors.
Then Giannis will demand his trade. He's like, screw this.
Right.
F Chris Paul.
And Rondo gonna leave the coaching staff
now I'm. Oh yeah, that's right. A lot of love lost there.
Yeah.
Darvin.
Maybe we need Rondo.
Too.
Maybe we need Rondo to suit up. Yeah.
At this point, I'll take it. Raptors later on tonight. We shall see who's on the floor for the Bucks, and if with the road trip too that we said at the time, hey, this isn't the toughest road trip in the world, and a lot of things happened. Giannis gets hurt, AJ Green goes down, so you're going to have some challenges there. But Bucks and the Raptors later on tonight at Fiserv Forum. The Bucks will open up that game as the 11th seed right now in the East, and the Raptors still in third. It's 16-11, the inverse record of the Bucks. They just won, beating the Heat, who it appears the clock is starting to strike midnight on with that run. And still playing without RJ Barrett, but certainly get some other pieces back. So it's going to be a challenge later on tonight at Fiserv Forum. That will do it for today's show. For Camille and Frank, I'm Justin, reminding you guys as well, like and subscribe the podcast. You get all the latest episodes. Let us know if we made your Spotify Wrapped list. You can even, if you're on the search for holiday gift ideas, join the Everydayer Club. You get ad-free episodes of this show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. You can gift subscriptions. You can find the link to do so in the episode description. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make that your second listen, NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. For Frank and Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.